Good evening. Welcome to the fourth episode of Tobago Matters. I am Glendora Lashley, moderator for this evening's discussion. Tobago Matters is a virtual series of community meetings aimed at providing accountability and transparency to the population of Tobago and, by extension, Trinidad. Of course, given the COVID-19 pandemic, this virtual series is to allow for the THA to report to the population on its plans and initiatives while also facilitating dialogue with and feedback from the population. This program is live on Tobago Channel 5, on TTT, on the Facebook pages for Tobago Channel 5 and the Office of the Chief Secretary, as well as live on radio, that's on Pulse 89.5 FM, Radio Tambourine 92.7 FM, and Street 919 FM. This evening we will be looking at preparing for the future with a focus on education and youth. We are joined by a panel of 4 officers of the THA. We have the Secretary with responsibility for education, innovation and energy, Marslyn Melville-Jack. We have the Secretary with responsibility for sport and youth affairs, Tracy Davidson-Celestine. We also have the Technical Advisor in the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy, Dr. Verleen Bobb-Lewis, and we have the Chief Executive Officer of the Tobago Hospitality and Tourism Institute, Dr. Stephen Shepperd. Good evening, panelists.
Good evening to you.
All right. Hopefully you all are good. Of course, if you've been viewing and once you know what's happening in the landscape, you're familiar with the politicians on set. So I'm just going to ask the technocrats only, starting with Dr. Verleen Bobb-Lewis. Please introduce us telling us a brief summary of your main responsibilities as technical advisor. Dr. Lewis?
Right, good evening again. I am the technical advisor in the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy. I work with curriculum, supervision, and indeed all the different units and departments providing technical advice as may be required from time to time. I also advise on curriculum delivery. I help to analyze results, monitor and evaluate programs that we have on stream from time to time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lewis. And I'm going to invite Dr. Shepperd.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Stephen Shepperd, Chief Executive Officer at the Tobago Hospitality and Tourism Institute, responsible for strategic management of the institute and also transitioning that institute to the University of Tobago. So that's in a brief summary of what I do.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shepperd. Of course, we're going to take a short break and we will be right back. Stay with us. You're viewing Tobago Matters.
COVID-19 has impacted us socially, economically, and of course in terms of the health. It has affected us locally and globally, if only because it was declared a pandemic and it affects our everyday, day-to-day lives. Vaccinating the population to achieve what we consider herd immunity allows us to be able to return to normalcy, some form of normalcy, something that we were accustomed doing from before. So the more persons you have vaccinated is the less persons that will develop complications, the less persons that will be hospitalized, and of course the less persons that will die. So you're seeing in countries such as the US, the UK, Turkey, Israel, and these countries, you're seeing in a number of these countries that a lot of their population have in fact been vaccinated. These places have vaccinated a number of their persons, and this would allow them to return to some sense of normalcy because the burden of the disease within the community is less, and as such you're going to have less complications, less hospitalizations, less death, and persons can get back to their lives.
Do you need to apply for emergency support inclusive of food and rental assistance? Follow up on applications or provide feedback from any service provided by the Family Development Department? Then call or WhatsApp 684-4692, 684-4255, 684-4699, or 683-8347 between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. daily.
Thank you for staying with us. You're viewing Tobago Matters. Of course, if you're no stranger to the program, you know that later on we will invite you to interact with the panelists, and that information will be put on the screen when the time comes. There will be a call-in segment. You can send your messages via WhatsApp and Facebook as well. But for now, let's start the discussion. And I'd like to start with the Secretary with responsibility for education, Secretary Marslyn Melville-Jack. Tell us, what is the policy direction of your division as it relates to the future of education in Tobago?
Good afternoon, evening, Glendora, and good evening to the viewing and listening public. Like education districts around the world, COVID-19 has created a new normal to which schools must conform. And at the Division of Education, we continue to promote a student-centered approach. We want to ensure that all our students have safe and equitable access to quality education. So that, in a nutshell, says exactly the direction that we are taking in COVID-19. And to endorse that, on the request of the division, the Executive Council has approved the formation of a district health unit, which is critical if we are to return our students to school in the shortest time possible. And this unit, which was approved, let's say about a few months ago, will be staffed by 3 health personnel: a house officer, which is a medical doctor, as well as 2 district nurses. And they will have the dedicated responsibility of being the liaison between the division, schools, and the Division of Health, Wellness, and Family Development. So this is a big move for us, and I can assure you that in conjunction with the CMO, interviews are now being held, and for the opening of school in September, this unit will be up and running. So we look forward to that. We will also continue to deliver on devices as they are needed, continue training for staff and the parents, and we will provide the technical support that is required at schools. In addition, we are contemplating the awards of bursaries, primarily to students in areas of need in Tobago. And even as we speak, I can tell you that when that advertisement went out for the district medical unit, only 2 persons responded to the house officer, which tells you that we have a dearth of qualified specialists, health specialists on the island. So we are looking at awarding bursaries to students so that they can go out and continue their studies in areas like that, that are really needed on the island. And the final thing I will share is that technical education has been on the back burner for a while. So in the coming months, we are desirous of not just erecting, but ensuring that the trade school in Roxborough is upgraded to a modern state-of-the-art technical institute, which would provide us with the kind of personnel that is required to move this island forward, especially where skills development is concerned. So that's where we are heading at this time.
Okay, thank you, Secretary. The district health unit, can you just expound on that? How is it? Is it more than one? How are the districts broken up in this case?
Well, Tobago is considered a district. We are the 8th district in Trinidad and Tobago as far as the educational system is concerned. So we will only have one unit for all the schools in Tobago.
Okay.
And you know, you may think, well, how can they be responsible for all the thousands of children? But when you consider that we work in conjunction with the Division of Health, Wellness and Family Development, and there are health centers all over Tobago, it makes it a whole lot easier. Right. What they do is that they would be primarily responsible for the COVID response, you know, but they would also be used in educating students, teachers, and parents on matters pertaining to health.
Okay.
They will also help us to ensure that schools are ready, COVID compliant, for the reopening of school.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Secretary. And let's go to Secretary Davidson-Celestine. Pretty much the same question in the sense, the policy direction for youth affairs and sport as it relates to going forward in the future.
Well, thank you very much, Glendora, and a pleasant evening to the listening public and to the panel that is here with us talking about Tobago matters. And for us in the Division of Sport and Youth Affairs, the focus is on building resilience amongst our young people and ensuring that they are equipped with the necessary tools to survive in any circumstance, whether challenging or otherwise. And of course, you know, we are in the height of the pandemic. It has been a challenge for all of our young people and all of Tobagonians by extension. And with that said, we have been pushing youth in a number of different directions, getting them to focus on technology because, of course, we see that technology is more needed now than ever. And so the Department of Youth would have trained about 100 young persons so far in understanding and embracing technology and even in treating with things like cyber security, because that is also an emerging challenge that we have. We have been focused on ensuring as well that youth are more creative and innovative, and more so that they can get into business. I saw very recently where during the COVID lockdown, quite a number of young people were engaged in quite a number of different business efforts. And so from the Department of Youth Affairs, we have been pushing young people and providing them with the support to grow small businesses. And so it has been, in terms of our programming, ensuring that we provide support to young people, as I said, so that they are more resilient and can manage, survive in any circumstance.
Okay. We're just coming out of the Olympics, Team TTO, and big up to Team TTO, much love and respect to them. It's never easy being an athlete. We here in Tobago have youth and sport tied to each other in terms of a THA division. Do you think that that should remain? Many people always feel as if sport gets the bulk of the funding and youth is kind of, left by the side. What do you have to say to that?
Well, the thing is, when you look at sport, youth is sport and sport is really youth. So I think the two of them are inextricably linked, and that is why you would have, in most instances, the division or youth and sport coming together, like in the Tobago House of Assembly, and I think it was the same case in Trinidad, and perhaps even throughout the length and breadth of the Caribbean. So for me, they are inextricably linked. Of course, with sport, there are quite a lot of tangibles coming out from sport, and the benefits from being in sport is well known. And so you would always find that as governments, the investment in young people have a tendency to go towards the development of athletes because, of course, sport can do quite a lot for any country, as we see in places like Jamaica, for instance. And so it is not that the focus isn't on youth development, because as I indicated, sport is youth development as well. But you would find that because the world focuses on the aspect having to do with sport, that it is more recognized than the other areas.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much for that, because there are many of us, who feel as if sometimes maybe the funding just isn't there. We understand it. Let me get the technical advisor in, Dr. Verleen Bobb. Curriculum development. That it seems as if Tobago needs an overhaul of the curriculum. What is currently in place right now, or what is being worked on in preparation for the future of public schooling in Tobago? And we're talking about the ECCE, the primary schools, and the secondary schools.
Yes, thank you for the question. Quite well, I'll start with the early childhood sector. And it is structured in such a way that it focuses on strands. They deal with wellness, effective communication, intellectual expression, aesthetic expression, and citizenship. And they build the entire curriculum around that. And they have themes that they work on from time to time. But there's a difference when they move from the primary school, from the early childhood sector, to the primary school. When we looked at what happened during the lockdown, when they were working from home, the virtual learning, we found that the teachers in the early childhood sector were able to manage in a special way, and we were quite satisfied with what happened. At the primary level, we were satisfied as well, but we thought there were more cases where some students were not reached. And we are hoping that the reach when school reopens in September, and we know we're going to have a hybrid, we're going to have it's going to be blended face-to-face and online, and we're pushing to have the curriculum organized in specific ways. We realize that from the time a child enters primary school, the focus is on SCA, and everybody's planning for that C exam. And sometimes other areas of the curriculum, other subjects on the curriculum are neglected. Or not, let me say, maybe not enough attention is paid to those areas. So we are looking at a more integrated approach to the curriculum, to the enactment of the curriculum at the primary level, where the subjects like social studies and science and even the creative arts will be given greater attention. And we are saying that even though we know they are doing the national exams, and there would be a heavy focus on the main areas that are tested, that we use all the other areas, the social studies, in your language, in your creative writing, in the mathematics. You use agriculture, you're planting crops, so you can do your maths. How many seedlings, lettuce can I plant on a particular spot of land? And what the yield would be, and you do your money, you do your graphs, everything it could be done in your language, in your maths. So we're looking at integration of the curriculum. And we will be working with teachers to ensure that more integration is done. As a matter of fact, there's a training session to happen within the next two weeks, the week before school is expected to open, and we'll be dealing with aspects of integration, where we hope that attention will be paid to every single aspect of the curriculum, especially because we are talking about social and economic development in Tobago. So we don't want anything to be left out. Right. We want attention to be paid to every single subject area. We know that tourism and hospitality is very important, and I know Dr. Shepperd will deal with that. But we're saying those must happen throughout school. It must begin at early childhood. It must be focused on at primary and also at the secondary level. And the Secretary Davidson talked about the sports, and we're saying we should encourage that from preschool. Let them learn to throw a cricket ball. Let them learn skills in jumping and whatever else is needing to take them to that level.
So let me ask you
Yes,
Let
sorry.
me ask you this, Dr. Bob, then. You're talking about all of that, and you talk about training for the teachers. Teachers sometimes feel as if, they have a heavy workload. What has been the feedback from teachers about all of these plans that you're speaking to?
Well, it's not anything new. The curriculum is there. We're not interfering with the curriculum. What we'll be encouraging them to do is to, as they interact with the students, have them communicate, have them write, have them not see subjects in isolation, but see them as linked together. So that students wouldn't just pay attention to maths, language, and creative writing, but all the other areas will be integrated as they should be.
All right.
So
Thank
that
you. Thank you
we
very
take
much,
care
Dr.
of all
Bob.
the interests of all the children in the island. That's what we want to look at.
Thank you very much. I want to go straight to the THCI CEO. You spoke about the transitioning of THCI into the University of Tobago. Give us an update. How has that been going?
Well, actually, thanks. That's been going quite well. What I'm working on is developing a business plan for the university. What has been done so far, we've done the analysis of the external environment, and right now it's challenging, but it's still pushing ahead. And we also developed, and this is very interesting, the subject areas, the academic areas that the university will focus on, and those were developed based on Tobago's needs. And I'll go into a little detail to tell you what they are. So first, it's tropical agriculture and food technology. And we'll appreciate, especially this COVID and post-COVID era, the issue of food security. It's a serious one. And we see every week we complain about food prices going up. So we have to not depend on other countries too much and depend more on what we produce here, but not only produce, but process. You know that Tobago has quite a number of micro-entrepreneurs, and that's where the food technology part, because they have to be taught formally how to do the food processing, food preservation, and the chemistry behind it and all that. So that part is key. The other part is the hospitality and tourism. And someone will ask, well, travel is down, why? It wasn't raining when Noah was building the ark. You have to prepare. So hospitality and tourism will cover strategic tourism, of course, culinary arts, food and beverage operations, but listen to this: landscape design, landscape maintenance, inventory management, forecasting, media interaction, customer service management, sound engineering, human resource management, small vessel construction and maintenance, coastal navigation. All that's part of tourism. People don't normally think about that. Then arts and culture. There's a Tobago Performing Arts company, but arts and culture is not formally taught.
Right.
And there's no research center for arts and culture, so we will have one. And there'll be a strong focus on preserving the tangible and intangible heritage. Tobago has extremely rich heritage. The Heritage Festival is 2 weeks per year. It's well subscribed. Imagine if you had a place you could see your heritage year round. Right? Then earth and environmental science. I mean, look at what is happening in the world. There's fire in Greece, fire in Australia, flood everywhere, Germany. Tobago has a very fragile economy, fragile environment. So we need to understand our own environment and understand how to preserve it, and where possible enhance it, and where possible reverse the global warming and so on, the climate change.
Right.
So that has to be key. Then the allied health sciences. Everyone thinks about doctors and nurses, but that's not all for health. You have the supportive, like diagnostic imaging, the medical equipment, maintenance, biomedical research, all the different types of therapists. They are needed to support the doctors and nurses. Very few places produce those. And key to the innovation and business development will be a key part. So those are the key business areas of the university.
Okay.
That's already been approved by the board, and we push ahead.
So the areas that you're speaking about, no doubt, they're needed when we're looking at positive development for the island.
Definitely.
What you just described is a very tall order.
It is.
What is the timeline like? What's the cost like? Do you have a projected timeline in terms of where you're going to start?
Yeah.
What we're going to introduce first? Do we actually have the funding? In a previous episode, people ask about, if we're putting out ideas there and we actually have the money to do it. Is this something that you realistically see coming to pass in the near future?
So what COVID has taught us is that school does not need buildings, right? I did an entire doctorate degree online. I've never physically met any of my classmates. Early universities were on the trees. Not that we're going back there, but what it needs are the people with the knowledge and the people willing to accept the knowledge from them. And once you think and you create and you're willing for this thing to work, it will work. Yet if you have the money, it will work easier. With a little bit of money, it will still work. Right? I've done lots of things in this country with limited funds. You just keep pushing and it will work.
Because what you're saying that, and I'm going to push you a little bit.
Sure.
One of the things when this came about and it was raised, you have the people who are excited about it, and of course you have the skeptics.
Sure.
And then you may have people like myself in the middle always questioning the dollars and cents. Do we have it? If we have it, where are we getting it from? So that's why I ask you in terms of, obviously, one doesn't expect that you're going to start the University of Tobago, and then we're just out there competing with the Oxfords and those kinds of things.
It will take time.
So in terms of, can Tobagonians realistically expect, okay, you're going to start with maybe 2 or 3 degree programs or 1 faculty at a time, that kind of thing?
So we'll probably have our first degree program within a year. THTI is working with the Business and Hotel Management School of Lucerne, Switzerland right now.
Right.
We're meeting with them on Monday afternoon. And on the 25th of August, we're meeting with Florida International University. And the whole idea is to have some partnerships to have that first bachelor's degree off the ground. BHMS will also have a master's degree, so it's very possible that by next 2 or 3 months, we may be able to announce that, including approval from ACTT, that we have on offer a bachelor's and a master's degree. So the work is continuing on it.
Okay.
And in terms of priority, well, the hospitality, that aspect is ongoing. That's THTI will transition to that. But the tropical agriculture is key. And that will be the first academic offering of the university.
All right. I'm going to come back to you on that because you're presenting a juicy thing for a lot of questions. But I want to bring in the Education Secretary, because Secretary Marslyn Melville-Jack, the CEO at THTI, is talking a lot about tertiary education and, of course, where we want the island to go. Before we even get there, we have primary education in terms of primary socialization. Do you see a need for something like parenting classes being official and being structured into our education system here in Tobago?
Well, Glendora, at this time, we do not see the need for actual parenting classes. What is required at this time is parental support.
Okay.
More than anything else. And like you said, we at the division, we are very concerned about primary education because I am sure many of us around here would remember not so long ago, we were in primary school and the family was the main support system at that point in time.
Correct.
You know, I know we can remember going home at the end of a school day and your parent or grandparent ensuring that you set the times tables and you read that lesson to make sure that at the end of the next school day, you came home with your little tick, right? The little red tick was so very important. But that seems to have been lost. Parents are so busy taking care of their lives and livelihood that they have lost that special touch that they had. So what we at the division have decided to do is to use the student support unit to help parents to better connect with the children. You know, this COVID-19 situation is a very stressful one for parents. So we provide coping mechanisms. And I am sure you would remember that just a few weeks ago, the Student Support Service Unit put on a series of panel discussions, and one was geared primarily for parents.
Right.
It was entitled Parenting Behind the Mask, because parents still wearing a lot of masks, eh? You know, because they are under pressure and they need that kind of support. So we, although the unit is Student Support Unit, they support parents, teachers, and students. They do home visits, and you know, because of technology, you don't have to actually go into a home to do a home visit. They do counseling because there are psychologists and counselors on the team. So that is the direction in which we are heading. And as Dr. Bob said so well, the primary school integration. We want to let the family realize that everything that we want the young people to know, the values, the attitudes, the respect, all that starts from the home.
Right.
And we want it now to become a part of the primary school curriculum.
All right, thank you. Secretary Davidson-Celestine, your colleague secretary, she's saying parental support, right? And we will come back to that a little bit, but you are talking about building resilience in young people and developing even a business mindset in young people. Do you also see that need for working with parents when we're looking at youth development and the future of Tobago? Because for many people at the end of the day, some of your first support may just be the parents and guardian. Is your division actively looking at that particular niche towards, I suppose, realizing your youth development dreams, your goals?
Well, we have not focused specifically on providing support for parents from the Division of Sport and Youth Affairs. From the Division of Health, Wellness and Family Development, there are those programs.
But not support, sorry to cut you, not support for parents, but more engaging parents so that they understand what the goal for youth development is.
Well, you know, the concept has always been...
Secretary, sorry, I'm told that I have to stop you and we have to stop and take a short break. We will be right back.
Hi, I'm Mr. Rajman, Drainage Supervisor with the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment. The decision for me to take the vaccine was a no-brainer, not just to protect myself and my family from the COVID virus, but the public as well. On a day-to-day basis, I'm charged with running the Roxborough District, which I have to interact with 600 plus workers, key stakeholders in the community and the public. So it's time for us to really stamp out this virus and eradicate it. So backs up, protection starts with us.
Do you need to apply for emergency support inclusive of food and rental assistance? Follow up on applications or provide feedback from any service provided by the Family Development Department? Then call or WhatsApp 684-4692, 684-4255, 684-4699, or 683-8347 between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. daily.
Vaccination is very important for the reopening of commerce and interaction in Tobago from a tourism perspective for a number of reasons. The first one, it's the best and probably the only known real defense, according to the medical professions, to shield us against the negative impact of contracting the disease, which is hospitalization and unfortunately demise. So we need to ensure that we have a healthy population. And this is the defense. So if we don't have a healthy population, a healthy workforce to be able to interact with visitors, then we stand the negative implications of being unprepared. We also need to have able and capable labor force by demonstration. And when I say by demonstration, you have to have people who are capable of turning up for work. And vaccination is one way of insulating us from having severe illnesses to be able to deal with that situation. Then you have the very important perspective where the source markets are now making requirements for travel based on the level of vaccination in the destinations that people are going to visit. So if we have a low level, we will not get the signal of approval for persons, particularly from the European side, which is our largest market, as well as from the US and North America. Although in some cases there have been relaxations in some markets, but the fundamental principle is that you need a certain percentage of your population vaccinated to trigger that signal that you are actually open. And that is why it is so important for us, because tourism is the biggest business outside of the government operations, which is the THA. Tourism is what's driving this economy in Tobago, and that's why we need to be vaccinated.
COVID-19 has impacted us socially, economically, and of course in terms of COVID-19 has impacted us socially, economically, and of course in terms of the health. It has affected us locally and globally, if only because it was declared a pandemic and it affects our everyday, day-to-day lives. Vaccinating the population to achieve what we consider herd immunity allows us to be able to return to normalcy, some form of normalcy, something that we were accustomed doing from before. So the more persons you have vaccinated is the less persons that will develop complications, the less persons that will be hospitalized, and of course the less persons that will die. So you're seeing in countries such as the US, the UK, Turkey, Israel, and these countries, you're seeing in a number of these countries that a lot of their population have in fact been vaccinated. These places have vaccinated a number of their persons, and this would allow them to return to some sense of normalcy because the burden of the disease within the community is less, and as such you're going to have less complications, less hospitalizations, less death, and persons can get back to their lives.
Thank you for staying with us. You're viewing Tobago Matters. We are live on Tobago Channel 5, TTT. We're live on Facebook, on the Facebook pages for Tobago Channel 5, as well as the Office of the Chief Secretary. We're also live on radio on Pulse 89.5 FM, Radio Tambourine 92.7 FM, and Street 919 FM. Before I had to abruptly interrupt Secretary Davidson-Celestine, we are talking about preparing for the future, and this Tobago Matters, there's a sub-focus of education and youth. Secretary Davidson-Celestine told us earlier that in her division, in that particular division, there is focus right now in terms of preparation for the future with respect to building resilience in young people, and she's also talking about having young people more business-minded. And so I was asking her, off the heels of the discussion, if in the Division of Youth Affairs and Sport, particularly youth, if you all see the need to engage the parents and guardians of the young people as you try to realize this resilience in young people and, of course, going into the business development area.
Well, a part of the youth development strategy speaks to consultation with all different sectors that would give support to the development of young people. And so adults have been consulted in terms of the youth development strategy, as well as, I suspect, parents who also are instrumental in those discussions as well. Because, of course, in the Tobago landscape, the saying is always, it takes a village to raise a child. Right. And so with that, you would find that all of the respective and key sectors would come together to be a part of the decision-making process. And in this particular instance, in terms of the youth development strategy, and even in sport, you would see quite a lot of parents being present in some of the sessions, and even at the hard courts as well, giving support to their children as they, train to become athletes or even professionals in the respective sport. And so the point that I'm making here is that there is always consultation, and they have been included in the youth development strategy discussions.
Okay, good. And I want to go to the technical advisor, Dr. Verleen Bobb-Lewis. With respect to all of the plans that you outlined, and the fact that we are at this time an emerging society really, with respect to teaching and the direction that you articulated before, is the division looking at adopting a sort of research-based with respect to how we teach? So as we teach, we collect the data, and that will actively be a part of forecasting and planning. Is that happening? Are you guys looking at doing that in the future?
Right, and well, research happens at different levels. So you find school-based research, and they'll be doing research in terms of what is happening well in the schools to decide how you improve on what you do. A lot of action research takes place in schools. We also have research taking place from students who are studying at a high level, master's and PhD levels, and they go into the schools and do research as well. And we always ask those persons to give us your results. Let's see what the findings say, so that it could help us to improve our practice. But at the division itself, there's a research unit that does research. We are currently looking at the effectiveness of the online teaching to ascertain whether or not it was successful or not, and see what the level of parent support or what is needed to improve what we are doing. So research is continuing, and the research unit guides that. But at the school level, for every class, for every subject area, research is done. We call them projects. I'm sure as a parent, you see children coming home with projects, school projects, that they do research as well, and teachers use some of the results of those bits of research to even inform what they do in school. At SBA level, there are students who do SBAs and do considerable research, some of which they use to determine their future, going into business or whatever the nature of the research was. So research is an ongoing thing from early childhood. Sometimes we see students with projects that are much too big for them. At primary school as well, we have a lot of research taking place at all classes, because it's encouraged in the teaching learning process. So every child at some point in time has to do a bit of research. And then we have, as I said before, the divisional research that we will do to find out which things are going well, what we need to improve on, and that is happening all the time as well. And so we have students in practice as well.
So let me ask you this, Dr. Verleen Bobb-Lewis. With respect to the divisional research, we have, as you know, we have some challenges on the island. Is there, in the past, I suppose people were not really open to hearing things like learning disabilities and so on. Are you actively looking at that in the various classrooms? Are teachers reporting on the number of students that they may see having different challenges? Are there active referrals going on?
Well, the student support unit deals with that all the time. So when teachers have difficulty with students, they're referred. We have educational psychologists attached to the division that work with those students. We have special education teachers that also work with students who need that kind of support. So and then we have 2 special schools with specially trained teachers to deal with students with disabilities. or whether it's a learning or a physical disability, they deal with that as well. So yes, we do research on that. We gather data to see what do we need to improve, what do we need to place in the schools to support the students, because support is very important for every single child. And we try to provide that as much as possible.
All right, thank you very much. Let me switch to Dr. Shepperd. With respect to THTI, another area, are you doing any active research there, specific to tourism, of course, and some of the learning, I suppose? You talked about all the things that we want to do to be able to change around tourism, but specific to THTI now as an entity, is there any research happening there?
Well, there's research we're just about to start, and that's on the labor in the hospitality and tourism sector in Tobago. Talking to the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association, they do not actually know how many people work in the industry, and they don't know how many people are trained, what qualifications, how much experience they have. So they've asked us to help with that, so we are just planning it at the moment, and at the end of it, what we will have is a baseline study of the labor force in the hospitality and tourism sector in Tobago, and that will let us know. What we could do is calibrate the training and education so that at the end of it we'll have pretty much a world-class workforce in Tobago that could compare with anywhere else in the world. But we have to know where we are right now. Right. It's pretty much unknown.
Have you found that over the years, I don't know if this has changed, people saw going to study at THTI, doing hospitality, you know, those basic courses, people saw them, I suppose, as doing that to get the basics. Have you been able to change that mindset where people see now, if you are potentially interested in being a student at THTI, that you can do it and aim for a more senior level job? Not that anything is wrong with doing it so that you can be the best waitress possible, but you can also perhaps be a reservations manager, you know, all of the different areas.
Yeah. So people call it the hotel school and they think all you do is learn to cook.
Right.
And that's a totally wrong perception. The reality is we do 4 associate degrees. There's culinary arts, there's hospitality, there's tourism, and food and beverage operations. And each of them, you learn quite a lot of management. There's math, there's sociology. So yes, so you learn some specialist skills, but after you've gotten those associate degrees, you'll be able to fit in anywhere in the hospitality or tourism sector. So it's not just about cooking or being a waiter or mixing some drinks. Inventory management, all those things you learn.
Thank you very much for that. I want to switch back to the Education Secretary and go back to something that you were talking about before. You did highlight that you all are looking at parental support. So I want to ask you the other aspect of that question. Is there any consideration to sort of revamping, my word here, adult education, even if it's basic adult literacy and numeracy, in a structured official way from your division?
That's an interesting question, because when you say your division now, I immediately started thinking community development because we are actually doing that at community development, you know. So these classes are run just as our vocational skills classes, because we understand too that there are so many adults in the society that still cannot read well. The reading particularly is the problem, you know, but we have found that adults are a little ashamed sometimes to let you know that they are at that level, you know. So as you speak, I'm thinking now about even having this done virtually, where the adults don't have to leave their home, so no one has to know that you are going to a class, you know, for literacy, you know. So for us to consider. I really believe that the virtual world has opened up so many possibilities for us, and it is something that we are seriously going to look at even from the Division of Education.
All right, thank you very much. And I want to go to the Youth Secretary now. Youth Affairs and Sport. We talk a lot about youth, from youth and you mentioned sport as well. What are some more key areas in that particular division as you focus on development for the future? Are there any other key aspects that you want to highlight?
Aspects that the technical staff at the division would focus on. Take, for instance, the Department of Youth. There has been quite a number of collaboration with respective divisions of the Tobago House of Assembly. Let's look at the Division of Finance with its CS program, where the focus is on preparing youth for the world of work and giving them that kind of experience and exposure. So they collaborate with that division. And then from the Department of Youth Affairs, there is also the World of Work program, where every year they would train over 100 persons in things like resume writing and dress code and customer service, so that they are prepared for entrance into the program that is run from the Division of Finance. Outside of that, as I spoke about business, there is the whole approach towards agriculture as well. And so when you're talking about youth development, it's not solely what the department is doing, but what also the other divisions are doing. Right. There is the YAPA program in the Department of Agriculture, and they have been training hundreds of young persons and preparing them to farm. From the Department of Youth as well, they have been training young persons as well. They have gone to Signal Hill and quite a number of communities, because as they do their research in the communities, the information would be used to shape the type of programs that are rolled out, and more so the communities that those programs should be spearheaded or piloted in. They have also been focused on youth in governance. Very recently, I think it was sometime earlier this year, they had the Youth Assembly debate, which is somewhat like the Youth Parliament. Of course, giving young people an opportunity to represent assemblymen. And the whole approach to that is ensuring that youth are involved in the decision-making process, and of course training them to be leaders, not only in politics, but in a number of different areas as well. So the work continues from the Department of Youth Affairs and Sport, or Division of Youth Affairs and Sport, and it's all aimed at ensuring that our young people are empowered to lead meaningful lives.
Right. Before I want to ask you another question, but before I ask you another question, let me just remind the viewing and listening audience that you will get an opportunity very shortly to get in on the discussion. We are going to be taking phone calls. We are going to be taking your contributions via WhatsApp, and of course that information, WhatsApp and Facebook, and we will provide that information shortly. As a matter of fact, let me just tell you the numbers. If you want to send a WhatsApp message, 688-4040, write that down. Make sure you formulate your questions and send it in. There are the Facebook pages for Tobago Channel 5, as well as the Office of the Chief Secretary, THA. You can put your questions there. Those are being monitored. And on the call-in, we are going to be taking the calls, 635-1005 and 635-1412. All right, and remember that we're live on various platforms. We're live on Tobago Channel 5. We're live on TTT. We are live on Facebook on the pages for Tobago Channel 5 and the Office of the Chief Secretary at THA. We're also live on the radio at Pulse 89.5 FM, Radio Tambourine 92.7 FM, and Street 919 FM. So you have no excuses. If you need to get up and leave or do something, you can turn or use another platform to be able to get us on. Coming back to the Youth Secretary, all right, you talked about preparing young people for the world of work and being business-minded. And very recently, you're also, in your health portfolio, encouraging people to get vaccinated. And that's a noble call. I saw recently on social media young men in this community here in Tobago speaking about vaccination, but their contention was the government saying vaccinate to operate. We are walking away. We ain't doing nothing. So I'm listening to you talking here, about the things that you want to happen and some of the opportunities. Where are you seeing a disconnect? Is what they are complaining about a reality for you? How are you if at all, getting to those young people? And by you, I'm talking about the entire division, because clearly it's not you alone to do it. But how are you getting to those guys? The guys in Louis D'Or that ended up on the media, unfortunately, because the law enforcement was there. Many of them, they're good guys. Guys all over Tobago, they're good guys. But they feel this particular way. What's your strategy to reach out to them?
Well, it really has to be about getting more young people involved in business. And hence the reason for me saying at the start of the program that we have to now train them to become entrepreneurs. Right. One of the things that we have discussed in recent times would be the utilizing those youth centers to have somewhat of a finishing school. Mm-hmm. And the finishing school concept is one where you would train young people to be professionals and to open businesses at the end of it. So there would be the curriculum, whether it is in skills such as air conditioning, whether it has to do with mechanics, but not leaving them right there, ensuring that at the end of it, they have the knowledge as well to open businesses, and then working with the Division of Community Development to ensure that they get the loans and the grants to start the business. Because, of course, at the end of the day, the Tobago House of Assembly really cannot employ everyone. Right. So we have to be focused on pushing them in that direction and helping them to set up the businesses as well and to provide that level of training. So it's a finishing school concept for the youth development centers.
I get you. Thank you very much. I won't put you on the spot at all and ask you if you're going to find funding to pay them anything, because listen, we're in 2021 and we all know young people all over the place ain't doing nothing. They're not doing anything unless there's monetary value attached. And that's why I've been asking the secretaries about the parents and so on, because it's a holistic effort to really bring back the society. And unfortunately, we have to do the work. I want to go to the technical advisor because I want to ask Dr. Verleen Bobb-Lewis, with respect to, well, first of all, let me give you some context. Our Chief Secretary, Ansel Dennis, recently I saw, I think when he went to commemorate the 1990 coup, he spoke about, there's a clip where he talks about teaching Tobagonians Tobago-centric things, like Tobago's history, political history, tourism-related stuff. As the curriculum specialist, and that's your responsibility as technical advisor, are we there? Are we getting there? What's happening in that? We need history in the schools. As the Chief Secretary pointed out, rightfully so, knowing the political history of Tobago is important. What are your thoughts on that?
And I totally agree with him. And it's something that we call understanding your roots. And it's something we could start at early childhood, where children would understand where they came from, how the parents and foreparents got here. When they get into primary school, widen the social studies curriculum. It's there, but because of the emphasis on exams, I don't think we pay enough attention to it. But I think civics in school, and they must understand democracy in school. They must also understand, why am I here? Who am I as a person? Somebody mentioned once that we have to teach what education is about to both students and parents. They must understand, why do I need to be educated? What can I do to improve my space, Trinidad and Tobago, in particular Tobago? And a long time ago it was, we started writing a curriculum to teach folk arts in schools in Tobago. That didn't go anywhere. So from time to time, we get together and say, look, the THA, the Assembly Act gives us responsibility for curriculum development. But we have not really developed a curriculum for Tobago. We depend on the national curriculum. And there are things that we could do here to teach about our island, Tobago here. Let them understand where we came. We do Tobago Heritage Festival as well. From that, they could learn about themselves and how they came and how Tobago really came about and all your traditions. So it's something that we have to pay more attention to. And there may be need for some curriculum writers to actually produce a curriculum so that the schools can utilize. Okay. Even a subject like geography is a subject that we think we need now. Since we put social studies, some things are not emphasized as much as possible. and geography, history and geography, I think we
All
need to
right.
re-emphasize in our schools.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor. We have to stop and take a break now for the National Lotteries Control Board Lotto draw. Stay with us. We'll be back. When we come back, we're going straight to the phone lines.
Hi, I'm Mr. Rajman, Drainage Supervisor with the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment. The decision for me to take the vaccine was a no-brainer, not just to protect myself and my family from the COVID virus, but the public as well. On a day-to-day basis, I'm charged with running the Roxborough District, which I have to interact with 600 plus workers, key stakeholders in the community and the public. So it's time for us to really stamp out this virus and eradicate it. So backs up, protection starts with us.
Do you need to apply for emergency support inclusive of food and rental assistance, follow up on applications, or provide feedback from any service provided by the Family Development Department? Then call or WhatsApp 684-4692, 684-4255, 684-4699, or 683-8347 between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. daily.
Applying for emergency support.
COVID-19 has impacted us. COVID-19 has impacted us socially, economically, and of course in terms of the health. It has affected us locally and globally, if only because it was declared a pandemic and it affects our everyday, day-to-day lives. Vaccinating the population to achieve what we consider herd immunity allows us to be able to return to normalcy, some form of normalcy, something that we were accustomed doing from before. So the more persons you have vaccinated is the less persons that will develop complications, the less persons that will be hospitalized, and of course the less persons that will die. So you're seeing in countries such as the US, the UK, Turkey, Israel, and these countries, you're seeing in a number of these countries that a lot of their population have in fact been vaccinated. These places have vaccinated a number of their persons, and this would allow them to return to some sense of normalcy because the burden of the disease within the community is less, and as such you're going to have less complications, less hospitalizations, less death, and persons can get back to their lives.
Thank you for staying with us. You're viewing Tobago Matters. We're live on Tobago Channel 5 on TTT. We're live on Facebook on the Facebook pages for Tobago Channel 5 and the Office of the Chief Secretary, THA. We're also live on the radio. Pulse 89.5 FM, Radio Tambourine 92.7 FM, and Street 919 FM. We're inviting your calls now and your participation. 635-1005 or 635-1412. Those are the numbers to call in, 635-1005 or 635-1412. If you'd like to send a WhatsApp message, you can send that to 688-4040. And of course, we will be monitoring the Facebook questions. Tobago Channel 5, if you're there on that page, you can put your questions there and we will try to get them answered by the panelists. All right, so while we wait for you to have your questions, if you'd like to engage in this, we go straight to WhatsApp. This question reads, what examples now exist that serve as an inspiration to the youths of Tobago that the Assembly is serious about preparing them for the future? What examples now exist that serve as an inspiration to the youths of Tobago that the Assembly is serious about preparing them for the future? Secretary Davidson-Celestine, we can start with you there. It's an Assembly question, so either of you can respond, but we will start with.
Well, I think first and foremost, it has to be about where the strategies that the Tobago House of Assembly has employed having to do with human development and where we are with that, because of course, you know, education is a key driver. The Tobago House of Assembly, through the Department of Education and even throughout all the other divisions, and you would hear more from the Secretary, has been providing financial assistance to persons who would want to pursue any qualification, whether it be in the field of medicine, whether it be whatever it is. The Tobago House of Assembly provides that support. For those who are not academically inclined, there is also support as well. Support coming from the Department of Youth in terms of the myriad of training programs, support coming from the Division of Community Development in terms of a number of programs throughout the Tobago House of Assembly. And of course, the opportunities for entrepreneurship as well in that arrangement, because outside of the financial assistance to study and to pursue those kind of programs, there are also financial assistance in the form of loans, in the form of grants for persons who would want to develop businesses. And then, of course, you know, the Tobago House of Assembly has been pursuing foreign direct investment. And with foreign direct investment, that opens up business opportunity for young people as well. So the Tobago House of Assembly, including all of the divisions, is very focused and very serious in ensuring that our young people have the resources and the opportunities to survive in this in this time.
Right. Have you, when you look at the youth groups out there, it's kind of amazing but realistic, the politics at play in youth group life. Now, it's important that everybody, if you are young, you know, you get that exposure. But you're seeing strange things happening. Is there a focus in your division with respect to building even the resilience of the groups themselves? How has that been? How many groups have you registered or reached out to? And what are the kinds of things that you're doing with them?
Well, there are over 100 youth groups registered with the Department of Youth Affairs. On International Youth Day, there were about 12 to 16 additional groups that would have been registered within this fiscal period, and they were awarded certificates for registration as well. One of the proposals that is in front of us now is to collaborate greater, more effectively with the Tobago Youth Council, getting them to build, to come up with different districts. And with those districts, there would be youth councils or youth groups in those districts that will help the Department of Youth Affairs and also the Tobago Youth Council to serve those districts and, of course, those youth organizations more efficiently. There is also a proposal on the table now for subvention for the Tobago Youth Council, and they're working hand in hand as well to find a structure so that they can call that place home. So the point I'm making is quite a lot of work is happening in terms of youth capacity building with the organizations, providing them with the support so that they can train their charges and, of course, the organizations to function more effectively.
Okay. Secretary Marslyn Melville-Jack, you spoke about bursaries before, and I like what you talked about, because COVID taught us, you know, you don't have doctors and nurses, you're just waiting. Some years ago, and I suppose I'm asking if this still exists, there used to be a scholarships and training thing where scholarships were available to study at tertiary level. Is that still in existence right now?
Yes, it is. It is the Department of Advanced Training and Advisory Services. And that department continues to support young people who are desirous of going abroad or even studying locally, you know, in collaboration sometimes with the GATE program.
Right.
But what I've found is that too many persons they see this as the next step after sixth form. So the thought processes, the creativity, the innovation is not there. It's like, okay, I need to go to study, so I'm just going to study something that I'm good at. But what is missing, I think, among young people is that visionary, you know, the innovation, what is required in Tobago at this point in time.
Right.
And, you know, it takes me back to when I was young. When I decided to go to study, I selected a program which would make me, when I returned to these shores, you know, everybody would want the services that I here that I can deliver. You know, at that time in the early 80s, I decided to study computer science. There were no computers in schools at the time. But I said to myself, in a couple years, this is what will be required on the island. So that was the course of study that I pursued, so that when I came back, I was in demand. And this is the kind of innovative thinking that we require from young people at this time. And I agree with the Secretary, there are more than enough opportunities available for young people. But what we don't have is that vision of innovation and entrepreneurship. And I agree with Dr. Bob. We need to start teaching our young people from very early that you can no longer just dream about leaving school and finding a job. Because as the Secretary said, the THA can't continue to employ everybody. And I'm seeing it in the young people now. It may not be many, but there are few people who are thinking that way.
All right, thank you for that. We have a caller, so we go to the phone lines. Good evening, caller. Caller, good evening. All right, we're getting a bit of noise. Good evening, caller. Are you hearing us? Are you hearing me? All right.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening, caller. Please listen to us on the
Good
telephone
evening.
that you're talking to
I
us.
am calling to find out. I'm not hearing you too good on the phone.
Okay, go ahead, caller.
All right. I'm trying to find out what is being done for the development of technical, vocational education and training in Tobago. And mind carefully, I don't want the response that we have several programs running. I am looking for the response where people can get that training and move on to maybe three programs, which we don't have here, but maybe in America, England, somewhere else, right? And I'm talking specifically to things like welding, for example, where people can go on and get a welding degree, auto mechanics, etc. There are several, plumbing and so on, things that we need, building construction. I would like to see that some of these things are really developed. In the past, I had the opportunity to develop a program and so on. Unfortunately, we didn't get anywhere. But I would really like to see something being developed for the development of technical education and training in Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, caller. All right, so the caller has made a point there to you, Secretary Marslyn Melville.
Yes, and you know, I agree with him totally. And in the first response that I gave, I hinted to the fact that the trade school at Roxborough is what we are looking at to become that institute of technology, because skilled labor on the island, more importantly certified skilled area, is sorely lacking. So if even we are to start those programs in schools, we do not have people qualified to teach the program, and I'm talking now from the Tobago House of Assembly. We know that MIC is there, okay, which is a branch of what is available in Trinidad. And they do many of these programs and have taken it to another level. But we have some young, I should say some tutors at the Roxborough Trade Center that can get to that level. They can take our students to that level, which is CVQ level 2. Right. At schools, we do CVQ level 1 in some of the disciplines. But when that trade center becomes what we want it to be, we can now train young people to CVQ level 2, which would make them certifiable, you know, to teach the
before
courses.
I go to the WhatsApp question here, are you thinking about bringing back that sort of residential trade school model that existed that people believe worked?
Not that model, not the residential model. I don't think people understand how costly it is to have any institution that offers residency. But these days you don't need to be staying anywhere. With the technology that is available, you know, just having the institute available for students, to me, is enough. So that's where we are going to start. Okay. And we are doing that very soon.
All right, let's go to a question from WhatsApp now. This question reads, is there any intention to modernize and extend the syllabus of the masonry class at the Trade Center? Is there any intention to modernize and extend the syllabus of the masonry class at the Trade Center?
Okay, well, I think that is exactly what I just spoke about a little while ago. I visited the Trade Center, and I am being very honest. When I got there, I could not believe that this is where we were in this century. Right. You know, because it was very, you know, rudimentary, and I think that we have professionals there, and we need to employ technology, you know, and innovation in what we do.
So that's my next question to you, actually, because you talk about the cost of residential living, which I fully agree and understand, having tried a similar thing and realizing the magnitude of the budget. There's also additional costs, similar costs attached to actually the modernizing of it.
Yes.
Investing in the technology, investing in the latest equipment and so on. Are you more moving in that direction? That's the focus.
Exactly. That's the direction we're moving in. As a matter of fact, for the next fiscal year, we've already put in a proposal, a request for funding so that we can, you know, renovate that building. Okay. To at least, you know, just for the initial stages, and then we look at the kind of equipment that we require to take the programs to the next level.
All right, we have another WhatsApp question now, and this one reads, is there any intention of having historical cultural heritage on our syllabus in schools? Is there any intention of having historical cultural heritage on our syllabus in schools? I want to switch to the technical advisor just to see if this is something that's already there, and if not, we can come back to the secretary, because then she will talk about if it's a policy decision that she wants to pursue. Dr. Bob? We may be Dr. Bob? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I'm there. Mm-hmm. It's there already. It's done at primary and secondary schools. We find students at the secondary level, in particular, pursuing areas of heritage as part of the SBAs in particular. And some students who do Caribbean studies also do that. So it's happening, but we could broaden the curriculum for it to make sure that all students learn about their cultural heritage. What we have too happening from the multicultural unit of the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy is a team of experts there that go to the schools and teach the heritage and teach the dances, the speech band and the folk songs. So that is happening on an ongoing basis at the primary level. And at the secondary level, they specialize as well in those areas.
All right, so let me push you a little further, and I'm being very, very biased here. I may be one of few people on the island that has an appreciation for Tobago language, what we call the Tobago dialect. I feel as if, personally, it's my own opinion, it should be taught at schools. There are people who believe that, no, we shouldn't do that. But I'm asking this in the context, you are the PhD here, when we're looking at communication, getting people to understand. So one, there's an appreciation for culture, but the fact that many people go back home to an environment, a primary environment, where the spoken language is the Tobago language, what we call the Tobago dialect. But when you go to public school, you're receiving instruction in what we describe as standard English. Is there a need to merge them and have them complement each other so that we can start to get to a point where we see improved understanding, we have comprehension issues, and thus improve critical thinking ability? Do you see it that way?
Yeah, I wish Dr. Winford James were here today to talk about that. Now our Tobago language is a language on its own, and then you have English language. But when students go to school, and they go to school, sometimes people call it the home language, the dialect that they speak, but it's a language. It's different to the language of the school, and some teachers actually shut them up. That may be the only language that the child can speak very well and express his or herself in, but the teacher sometimes shut them up and say, okay, I don't want to hear this here. And you find those students, sometimes it hinders their progress because the shutting up causes them not to be very outspoken. So we have to treat it as a language and allow students to speak it and even write it, even as they write their poetry and their speech band and their calypsos and their spoken word. Let them write it, but they have to be able to differentiate between what is the Tobago language and what's the language of exams, the official language of the office. And they have to understand when to use which language, how to decode. They have to learn that. So in other words, we're living in a bilingual society. So you have your Igbo language, and there is English, and students and teachers have to understand both and understand that that's how students will improve, express themselves in a way that they before they can master the English language.
I'm happy to hear you say that, especially as the one with the PhD, because when a layman like me say it, people think I talk in madness. We have a way that we say to our fellow people, you're dunce, because you're talking, what is our Tobago language. But when you check it out, there are some rules, we say so, and you double up on things, and there are the rules to that. But that's a different discussion. Yes. I want to go to Dr. Shepperd and ask you, we're talking a lot about schooling and, the things that are happening in schooling. From the THTI perspective, you're talking about the University of Tobago being able, within a year or so, if I remember correctly what you said in the earlier, to be able to offer the bachelor's and perhaps a master's program. Now, as it is THTI accredited? I know you spoke about ACC going to the Accreditation Council. I think that was in relation to the University of Tobago. Or is it also for THTI?
THTI is accredited. THTI is actually the only accredited hospitality and tourism institute in the country. Right. THTI is in demand. We've been asked to do training in Guyana. We've been asked to do training in many areas in Trinidad, and we are doing it. Because, last year the institute in Trinidad closed. So we are accredited with ACTT. In January, we have our midterm review, and in 2024, we come to re-accreditation. So we are in the second phase of accreditation at ACTT.
Okay. Are we pursuing international accreditation? And let me give you some context, right? Before you get excited about that. In June, I think June 29th, the New York Times published an article talking about Caribbean medical schools in particular failing the students. And one of the claims in that article was that the schools were not internationally accredited, but they were pretending that they were using their websites, right? That's the allegation there. I didn't go investigate. So I'm asking you now in that context, because we are attracting international students, regional students, and so on? Are we internationally accredited? If not, are you actively pursuing that?
Okay, so accreditation with ACTT is actually international accreditation. Because there's a collaboration with the accrediting bodies around the world. Okay. So ACTT collaborates with the American Institute and in the UK. So once you're accredited here, like UWI, for example, doesn't have to pursue any other accreditation, this institutional accreditation with ACTT. There's no need for any other. UWI, however, has program accreditation with bodies around the world. Right. THTI is pursuing hospitality assured accreditation out of the UK, and that was on a recommendation from ACTT because of what we do. Okay. Right? And so that's different. There is fallacy about international accreditation. Each country has its own accreditation. But there's program accreditation, like, for example, medicine has to be accredited. That's accredited in the Caribbean, right. CAMHP. In UWI, for example, mechanical engineering is accredited out of the US, and some electrical out of the UK, IEEE.
So talk to us a little bit about the accreditation that the Accreditation Council asks you to do with the UK body. Yeah. What will that mean?
Okay, hospitality assured, because it's specific to hospitality and tourism. THTI was hospitality assured accredited. It was allowed to lapse a couple of years ago. They asked that we redo it. We didn't pursue it for the last year because we were at home, working from home. There was no benefit in having it. But now that things are slowly getting back to normal as we vaccinate, we're going to start from 2022 and hope by the end of 2022 we should be hospitality assured accredited.
Okay. So let me ask you another question. With respect to everything, there's a cost attached, and the secretaries, they will smile because they have to be debating money all the time. In terms of, I suppose, the island's economy and the development, we're talking about preparing for the future. Right. Are you actively seeing THTI/the University of Tobago being a real income earner and adding significantly to the island's GDP? Let's say that, the island's GDP. We have to start to speak like that.
Definitely.
Are you seeing that as a real possibility for Tobago?
Definitely. Let me start with Tobago first. If you listen to what the board secretaries said, everything they said has to be supported by the University of Tobago. Secretary Davidson-Celestine spoke about the business development. That's why there's innovation and business development in the university. Secretary Jack spoke about, Dr. Bobb-Lewis spoke about the arts and culture. It's in there. So the subject areas for the University of Tobago were carefully selected. But on the income earner, very soon, THTI is going to start a e-learning platform, right, with a company out of Nova Scotia. And there'll be thousands of asynchronous courses there, meaning people around the world will be able to do courses from Tobago via that platform, and the money will come into Tobago. And we now have the ability to pay online, so anybody, anywhere in English-speaking world, and other languages, because it's easily translatable, can do courses on our e-learning platform. Okay.
How has that platform been working out?
No, it's not in yet. We recently signed the MOU. Okay. We have the first kickoff meeting week after next week on that one. And you find, because people are asking now for not so much a specific time to do a course, I want to wake up any time in the night and do it. Right. So it doesn't have to have somebody there waiting to teach me. And that's coming soon. Got you. Very, very soon, by the end of September this year.
Okay, got you. Secretary Marslyn Melville-Jack, Education here again, and it's good that you're also tied with community development because they sort of go hand in hand. Based on what Dr. Shepperd is talking about, tourism, some of us may contend that there may be a need for really teaching community tourism, right? And again, I think this may be something that even your Chief Secretary spoke about as well. Are you looking at that, and even coupled with your role as being responsible for community development, with really driving community-based education? The Youth Secretary talked about the youth organizations and so on, but where you are concerned, are you looking at that aspect? Tell us what's happening there.
Okay, well, I honestly cannot say that I'm looking at that, but we know that that is the way that tourism is going at this point in time. Community tourism is the buzzword, and I think Tobago is perfectly poised for a situation like that, because everyone speaks about the Castara experience, you know, and I honestly believe that at the level of the school, even in social studies, what I'm saying is that there is structure, but what is required is creativity. So I believe even in the social studies curriculum, there is avenue there for the teachers creatively to use the locations where schools are located and teach that kind of tourism. For example, Charlottesville. A primary school in Charlottesville is ripe for community tourism to be taught within the social studies structure, you know? So I honestly do not think that we have to create a specific curriculum for that. There is the structure in place, and all it calls for at this point in time is creativity.
All right, let's go to WhatsApp. We have a question on WhatsApp coming in. And I'm just waiting for the question to come up on screen here. All right, so it reads, when will we see short courses beyond mixology and bartending, such as hospitality, tourism, etc. at THTI?
Much more than that by September this year. It already exists. Ask them to go to THTI's website. They'll see what is available. And on our Facebook page, there are lots of stuff we are advertising. I'm not sure why the person is not seeing it. But ask them to go to www.thti.edu.tt and they'll see what's there.
All right, so you heard
There's
it.
much more than that.
Check out the website now, Dr. Shepperd here making some real serious boasts there. So you all have to go and take him up on that. Look at the website. If you need to sign up from now, you know, sign up and test, push the institute to really deliver the things that you're posting about. Say again?
There's a course in photography, iPhone photography starting soon.
Okay, that's
cool. There's a course in birding. Very non-traditional things are happening.
Right.
So just let them go to the website. It's www.thti.edu.tt and you'll get much more than mixology and bartending. So.
All right. So I want to go to the Secretary for Youth and Sports, where they're asking mixology. That mixology and bartending clicked a question in my mind. You know, we have an alcohol problem, right? We have an alcohol problem. Unfortunately, the way we socialize, the way we cope, the way we do everything relates to alcohol. You're celebrating something, you drink some alcohol. You're depressed, you drink some alcohol. We grew up getting a cork of brandy in the tea. That's it. When you look at youth and sports, are you seeing a problem with alcohol in Tobago that has to be addressed?
Well, yes, we have a very high alcohol consumption in Tobago, and I suspect in Trinidad and Tobago as well. But it's not dealt with specifically from the Division of Youth Affairs and Sport, but more so from the Division of Health, Wellness and Family Development. There is a unit, which is the ADAPT unit, which treats with alcohol and drugs and those kind of things, and out of that there are outreach programs and of course trying to get persons rehabilitated as much as is possible. So the point is, though it doesn't exist specifically within this division, it is within the Tobago House of Assembly at the Division of Health, Wellness and Family Development.
Right. Okay. All right. So that's
and in terms of the numbers, I would think that they deal with quite a lot of persons on a yearly basis. I don't have the specifics with me at this time, but the numbers are increasing, especially now with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Right, and that's the direction I was going in terms of whether or not specific to the youth division, because we know the health division is doing a lot, but when you look at sometimes the youth can get lost in the overall, the overall effort. So even in terms of collaboration, let's say with the TTPS and other stakeholders that can help, is there that kind of collaboration now, interagency between the Division of Youth Affairs and Sport and those agencies, when you look not just at alcoholism, but in terms of abuse and, you know, the real stress factors, that we look more for the adults and sort of ignore that the youths may be experiencing these as well?
Well, no, there would be collaboration at all different levels across the Tobago House of Assembly. One I did emphasize earlier, because most of what happens with young people is really a collaborative effort with the Department of Youth Affairs. And so I would suspect that if there are persons recorded who are young, which falls into the age of youth and have serious challenges, there would also be that level of collaboration as well. But no, I don't have the statistics in terms of gender and in terms of age group, and it is something that I would definitely look into.
Okay, all right. Let's go to WhatsApp again. We have another question on WhatsApp. This is asking, what is the plan to maintain or improve the quality of life and standard of living of the average Tobagoan? So this is a wide open question, and I suppose each secretary will respond. What is the plan to maintain or improve the quality of life and standard of living of the average Tobagoan? Outside of everything that you said before, because it all speaks to what's going here, is there anything else? I'm putting the policymakers on the spot here, and then we go to the technocrats. Is there anything that you want to say to this contributor?
Well, well, you know, for me, I would look at it from the perspective of the possibilities that are to come in terms of where the Tobago House of Assembly is doing its visioning exercise, and it has to do in large part with attracting foreign direct investment and the focus on expanding creating industries in Tobago. There was a time when the Tobago House of Assembly was very focused on bringing hotels into the island, hotels like Sandals. That focus is still there, it still remains. Because if we have to grow the Tobago's economy, we have to be in a position to attract that kind of investment. And if you were to look at what is happening in the region, I'm talking about the Caribbean, whenever there are those kind of hotels functioning at that level, you would find the standard of living immediately increases, because it opens up opportunities for a number of different persons in a number of different areas. And so those kind of things could help us to advance and increase the standard of living. Even with the construction of the airport, they are creating now opportunities for an inflow of about 3 million passengers on a yearly basis. That too opens up the tourism sector in a particular way. The Tobago House of Assembly has also been focusing on alternative energy, and I'm sure you might have heard from the Secretary with responsibilities for environment. And with alternative energy, you're talking about utilizing solar and those kind of avenues that could also be an impetus to improving Tobago's contribution to the national development and also improving our standard of living. The point I'm making here is that we have to think out of the box as a people. And from all of the discussions here, you have heard two words, creativity and innovation. And so within our own selves, we have to ask the question, what else can we do? The Tobago House of Assembly will create the environment, but at the same time, the residents must look to see what those opportunities are and be in a position to capitalize on those opportunities. The opportunities also in arts and culture. The University of Trinidad and Tobago teaches things in film and dance and animation. We have not sufficiently explored that as a people. So those are some of the areas that we can look towards in the future to expand and to grow and to raise our standard of living here.
Right. Secretary Melville, you said a lot on this, and I'm wondering if I want to put you guys on the spot. Well, I do want to put you on the spot a little bit, because we are, unfortunately, Tobago's island economy is dependent on government spending heavily. If you heard the chamber lady spoke recently, I heard her say Tobago's economy is dead, right? And this person is asking about the future standard of living. As politicians especially, are you all prepared to take that very daring step and really kind of let go of some of the responsibilities so the private sector can get an opportunity to be rebuilt? But that will also mean taking the responsibility of really investing in key areas because they are going to need some funding. It may just mean that if you go that direction, your voters are going to be upset and they might just say, I'm going to stay home. But do you see, policy direction-wise, do you see that as something that is required for this better standard of living that the person on WhatsApp just asked about?
Yes, Glendora, I do agree with you there. And, you know, sometimes I believe that the Tobago House of Assembly has been pushing Tobagonians towards that vision, but we have not been catching the vision as quickly as we should. And I'm talking specifically now about building the private sector. Sometimes the reason that we do not get the kind of response that we want from the private sector is because it is so small. All right? So what did the Tobago House of Assembly do? There was the erection of all these micro-entrepreneurship buildings on the island, you know, where we pushed young people or anyone who was interested in creating a business into low-cost, very low-cost, affordable business spaces. That means that we created the environment, you know, and in addition, we were willing to give you grants and loans to push you a little further. But we are not getting the kind of successes that we anticipate. There was also the Cove Industrial Park, you know, and sometimes you wonder how much more can the Tobago House of Assembly do. We will continue to encourage, we will continue to provide the kind of training at community development. We have established this one-shop seamless transition where we teach you skills, we teach you entrepreneurship, we give you grants, we give you loans. There are places that you can create your business. How much more can the Tobago House of Assembly do?
We're going to go to WhatsApp. There's a WhatsApp question, and this person is asking, what is going on with the Moriah Recreational Ground after so many years? Secretary Davidson-Celestine, what's happening with the Moriah Recreational Ground? This building since I live in Moriah, Secretary, so answer carefully.
Well, you know, the thing is, development is really a journey, and I have seen how the Moriah Recreation Ground has changed. I think it was from 2005 or 6 thereabout to now. As a matter of fact, there was no recreation ground at that time. And I recall, I think I was the Assistant Secretary in Youth Affairs and Sport then when we started with the Division of Works and Infrastructure to dig out the area so that, well, the construction started then so that the residents of that area can have a recreation facility. And then very recently there was the installation of lights and the playing field, and I think washroom facilities have been constructed, if I'm not so mistaken. And then of course you have hard courts. I think what is happening now with Moriah Recreation Ground is that we now need persons to utilize the facilities, because, you know, sometimes it's not worth the while to be adding physical infrastructure when there is hardly anyone from the community using it. So my encouragement is for now, for the people of the area to maximize the utilization. And when you do that, you would force the Tobago House of Assembly and even the Division of Sport and Youth Affairs to add more, because, you know, we would be satisfied that things are happening there.
All right, we have a Facebook question. Let's go to Facebook. This person is asking, where and how are these opportunities being marketed so that the population is made aware? All right, and this is a very good question. Where and how are all of these opportunities that you're speaking to tonight being marketed? Where are you advertising these? Who are you, which channels are you using so that people really know, the population, all of the Tobagonians are made aware of this? Anybody. We're going to Secretary Marslyn Melville. We're going to you because all of you all have programs.
Yes. That's a very good question, you know. And at this time, I can say that we primarily use the division Facebook pages, primarily, you know. And I do agree that we need to do a little more marketing. Before COVID-19, the Division of Community Development, Enterprise Development and Labor was everywhere. We were out there in the communities in Trinidad and in Tobago, so you knew about what was happening. Now we are not out there so much, and we rely heavily on the Facebook page. So again, we're going to come back to funding because, you know, advertisements, whether it's on Channel 5 or wherever, are costly. Yeah? And we normally tend to go the way of how can we do this cheaply, you know? So it is an extremely good question and tells us that we need to beef up our marketing.
All right. And I suppose your sister secretary may have a similar, because we have some more WhatsApp questions, but you want to add to that one?
Well, you know, over time, I'm looking at it from the perspective of the Tobago Assembly. We do the promotions of what has been happening within the divisions, of course, out of the Office of the Chief Secretary. There is that arrangement, Facebook page, utilizing the print and the other traditional forms of media. From the perspective of the Division of Sport and Youth Affairs, there is also social media where they would, on occasions, inform the public about the different types of programs. And so that the point I'm making is that throughout the Tobago House of Assembly, we have communication officers in every division. And if it is that the information sometimes doesn't come out with the kind of regularity, we of course encourage members of the public to avail themselves to come forward and, you know, get an understanding of what is happening within the respective divisions as well. And of course utilize the websites.
All right, thank you. So basically, guys, we all have financial issues. The secretaries are saying that the THA also has to look at their budget. So they're going the safest route at this point. If you want to know something, check out their social media presence. Hopefully they are going to understand the seriousness of using traditional media and put some budgets in place for that. Let's go to the other WhatsApp question. This person is asking, are there plans to reinvent the Mount St. George Youth Camp with a syllabus from the Trade Center to allow students to further develop themselves? I think we sort of spoke about this, Secretary Melville-Jack, but this person, I suppose, wants clarity in terms of specific to Mount St. George Youth Camp.
Well, at this point in time, the space that was traditionally the Mount St. George Youth Camp is now occupied by the THDI and will eventually become the university. And as I said before, we have no plans at having a live-in kind of arrangement where it comes to technical training. But MIC is available, and in the not too distant future, the Roxbow Trade Center would be up and running.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for that. We have another WhatsApp question. This one is asking, why is it so hard for young people to get jobs after studying for years? Why is it so hard for young people to get jobs after studying for years? And again, it's something that you touched on earlier in terms of even what you choose to study and how you arrive at that. So go ahead.
Yes, so again, I want to appeal to young people that life has changed. You can no longer decide that you will leave school, you will go and study just about anything, and when you come back, you will be afforded a position. I want to encourage young people to observe the context of the current situation in Trinidad and Tobago and make yourself marketable so that when you select your course of study, you yourself may become your own bosses. Entrepreneurship is the way to go at this time. And you know, before COVID-19, and this is just an example, we never thought that something like live streaming could be an industry. And now there are people making beaucoup dollars off of live streaming. So I'm saying, observe the context of the times that we are living in and ensure that your course of study will be something that is marketable.
Right. One thing I remember, this is probably more than about 2 decades, at least more than a decade ago, while I was employed at the THA, doing a public day with a secretary then. And a young person came in, very, very frustrated. They pursued a course with a university to be able to go and teach. And then when they came to education, education said, this course isn't accredited. And this is a well-known university. And so you graduated, you have this, but you can't do anything. And then the person said to the then secretary, well, I want to work. So the secretary asked, what can you do? You know, which job in this division are you looking at? And the person legit said, I don't know, I didn't think about all of that. I come to you because I want a job, so just give me any job, give me anything. And we know this happens all the time. You're talking about getting people prepared. Do you feel that there's a responsibility now on your division as well to even maybe start that in a more official way? Because we've been saying it over and over and over, and you still have the same problems. People are studying things that are irrelevant. And maybe you can tell us about, if you have a priority list with respect to the scholarships, what are those areas, so that people can know what are some things that you can actually go and study.
Okay, so let's start from preparing students. I think this is a conversation that should begin in the secondary school. And the fact that we have guidance counselors at the school, they play a very critical role in helping students to understand the context and to understand how they can achieve what they want to achieve. So that is already in place. And career days, we have that all the time. It gives you an opportunity to interact with the different institutions to know their needs at this point in time. And that's an important word. What is needed to take Tobago to another level? Right. And I can tell you right away that at the top of our list at this point in time is specialist medical personnel. Everybody wants to become a doctor. Nobody wants to specialize. So even now, studies in infectious diseases, yeah?
Wow.
How many persons on the island have that qualification? At this point in time, maybe 2 or none, you know? So that would be one of the areas. We know we've always had a dearth of librarians on the island. That's another course of study that should be promoted. Technology. The skilled technical fields.
Right.
Okay? Critical, as I said before, we cannot find teachers for things like woodworking and plumbing, and you cannot find teachers because no one is qualified in that area. So we want to encourage young people even now. These are some of the things that you should be looking at when you select your course of study.
All right. Okay, so the secretary has spoken. Maybe I could throw in there that they can add political science. The first thing I wanted to study at UE was political science. That's donkey years ago. And I was told by THA, listen, that's not a priority area, but I will dare say 2 decades after, it looked like it needs to be a priority area. That's on the side. We go to WhatsApp. Somebody is saying, what directive can you give to MIC graduates who are seeking employment in the various divisions without success, especially in the electrical area? What directive, well, directive is an interesting word there, can you give to MIC graduates who are seeking employment in the various divisions without success, especially in the electrical area?
Well, that's very interesting, because I can tell you that about 3 months ago, the Division of Community Development, Enterprise Development and Labor were looking for electricians, you know, and sometimes I think that the word targeted is what is critical here, because I think people just put in applications anyway. I always say to young people in particular, don't just send in an application. You know, what you are supposed to do is to look, for example, they leave school and they send applications everywhere. And at the end of the day, those applications are just pushed in a corner somewhere. Right. What you need to do is look to see when the advertisement comes out for the particular field. For example, DIQE, Department of Youth, or even the Division of Education may be seeking electricians. That is when you send in that application. And I don't know why electricians are out there without jobs, because it is a critical area, especially in the divisions that do repair work. You know, like schools, we always have to repair schools. We need electricians all the time, community centers, you know. So I would encourage them to look for these applications. And when they see them, make the they can apply at that point in time.
I wonder if Dr. Bob has any research on that, in terms of divisional research, as to whether or not people are, as the Secretary has highlighted, really over applying to some of these areas because they're available. There may be people who are applying to programs because there's a $50 stipend attached. And so you get a certificate in an area where we have thousands of graduates already and very limited areas. Dr. Bob, are you hearing me?
Yes, I am. And at one time we had what we call program hopping.
Yes.
People were moving from one program to the next, from MOS to MIC. Yes. And after all of that, they would still tell you that they couldn't find a job. What has to happen is that there must be an entrepreneurship aspect attached to every single program. So that when they graduate, they know, okay, you may not get a job at the THA, but there's something that you'll be able to do for yourself. So we have to show them how to develop a little business plan, how to set up your own business. And I know they do that at community development as well. Right. So we have to encourage them to get into other areas. And the Secretary mentioned a lot about TVET, and it's something that we really are talking about, not just talking about, we're doing something about it. She mentioned the Roxburgh Trade Center, expanding, repairing, and doing additional programs. And we also have programs down in the West as well to encourage. And a question came up earlier about the young people and what should they be doing. There are many things that young people can do. And sometimes we advertise the programs, and it's advertised on the air, on television, on the papers, in pullouts, on Facebook. And then there was a time when you would have given large stipends. That doesn't happen anymore. You have to do this program because you want to do it and that you want to contribute to the field. So there's another program that we do called the Construction Development Program. And people do that, and they're more from 17 years and up, because they want to do it. And when they finish, they don't really look to the THA for a job, but they find employment on their own. They do the CVQ level 1 and 2, and that's happening as I speak, because it's done virtually, and they find their jobs. They don't come to the THA for jobs. So we have reached that stage, and we reached it a long time ago, where the THA cannot employ everyone, and that people have to find employment elsewhere with the private sector or be entrepreneurs.
All right. And let me just go to Dr. Shepperd very quickly. As a past student at THDI, I can tell you clearly, for internship time, I left the country. I went to St. Martin, I went to New York, and I did my internships there. I then told other people, you can do the same. People were scared. Tobagonians are scared. Parents are scared to send their children out. I went to New York. The only thing I got was a Metro card. I paid my own rent. I had to live, and I went there. I worked for free because I wanted the skills. What do you have to say to Tobagonians who need to embrace education but are scared to take the chance?
Well, I want to go back to the question the person asked about standard of living and quality of life. We need to thank that person for that question. It's very deep. And the board secretaries were talking about innovation and so on. And the key to that, and Dr. Bob and I speak about it all the time, education is the pathway to the quality of living and standard of life. But the more fundamental thing is the ability to think. We do not sufficiently teach people to think, and that is the reason why we do not have sufficient innovation and creativity. If we focus on the thinking, then that will happen. But back on the breaking the barriers and the boundaries, yes, it's needed. In 2019, we took 4 students to New York to take part in the Caribbean Tourism Organization program. And their eyes were opened. When we passed under the East River and we went to the Empire State, they said, we passed under that? Yes.
Well, Dr. Shepperd, unfortunately, the time has come to an end. We have to stop. Hopefully you all got the gist. The secretaries were nodding. They agree. Take the risk. Invest in your future. Education is important. Youth is important. I would like to apologize to everybody if we didn't get to your WhatsApps or so. Good evening.